Welcome to Roadcase, the podcast that explores the live music experience. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Josh Rosenberg, and I'll be taking you on a journey through in-depth interviews with performers and key people in the industry to explore the magic of live music, how it can be totally transformative for both fans and performers, and we'll look at how they take it all out on the road. It's going to be a great ride, so here we go. Welcome to this third episode of Roadcase. I'm really excited to be here. I'm the host, Josh Rosenberg, and I want to thank you all for joining me. Right off the bat, I'd like to encourage listeners to get involved with Roadcase. Love to hear what you think. Comments, questions, suggestions for guests, you can email me, info@roadcasepod.com. You can also contact me on the socials, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. If you are able to and can support this podcast at Patreon, we have a Patreon site at patreon.com/roadcasepod. And of course, you can get this podcast on your favorite listening platform. So I'm really excited today that we have Bruce Finkelman with us. Bruce is a pivotal figure in the music scene here in Chicago, where I live. Bruce runs the Empty Bottle and Thalia Hall, which are two of my favorite venues in Chicago. He's also a partner in Evanston Space up in Evanston, which is a northern suburb in Chicago, and the Promontory, which is located in Hyde Park, which is on the south side of Chicago. I really love Bruce and his passion for music. He just loves the buzz of a live show. His enthusiasm and is really phenomenal, and he'll articulate that in a really interesting way during the interview. We talk about some pivotal shows. We get a whole bunch of stories about the live music scene here when he was just starting out in the early 90s, and we'll talk about the origins of the bottle at that time. We'll also look at the relationship of these venues with neighborhoods. Chicago is a neighborhood city. These, especially Empty Bottle and Thalia Hall, are woven into the fabric of those neighborhoods. Empty Bottle is in Ukrainian Village. Thalia Hall is in Pilsen. We'll talk about the relationships of the venues and the neighborhoods there. Of course, we can't talk about live music and venues without talking about the show stoppages. Obviously, it's been the cataclysmic effect on venues and artists and everyone associated with live music. Bruce is involved in some local organizations, namely Civil, which is the Chicago Independent Venue League, on the national level with NIVA, National Independent Venue Association, and we'll hear a little bit about what he has done in that regard. So before we get started, I want to give you the heads up that we had a very brief technical issue early on in the interview. Bruce's voice gets a little bit obscured at the beginning. He's calling in from his car. There's a little bit of background noise, but that ends really quickly, and then it's all cool from there. So again, I'd like to thank all of you for listening, and I'd like to welcome to Roadcase Bruce Finkelman, owner of the Empty Bottle and Thalia Hall, two venues that are near and dear to my heart. This is a really fun interview. I know that you'll all really enjoy this. So here's Bruce, and here we go. Okay, we've got Bruce Finkelman here on Roadcase. I'm really happy to have you here, Bruce, from the comfort of your own vehicle, and thanks so much for taking the time.
My pleasure, and it's truly a roadcase because I am traveling.
There you go. Hence the name, right?
Right.
So
I thought that's why I was supposed to be in a car.
Oh yeah, I didn't make that clear, but hey, This is I'm going to take your cue, and we're just going to run with it, man. That's a great idea. I'm always looking for new forms of creativity, so this is great. I'd like to just dive right into current events with NIVA, the National Independent Venue Association, and Civil, which is the Chicago Venue League for independent venues, and just hear from you sort of where we stand today, and what some of the major issues, obviously funding that you're facing, but what is it kind of looking like from your perspective right now?
I mean, it's looking pretty bleak right now. I'll talk about Chicago in general, but here is, we have one of the best music scenes in the country, if not the world. And to think that we could come out of this pandemic with, upwards of anywhere to 50% loss of some of our music venues and the things that are happening around us, it's just heartbreaking, and it's just unfathomable that can happen.
When you say 50% loss, you mean 50% of venues just going,
Of just
yeah,
deciding that they can't make it through this cold winter.
yeah,
The we've been lobbying and looking for support and acknowledgement from our state, local, federal governments for since March of and it doesn't seem to be coming anytime soon. And I think without that kind of assistance, many of the venues that we call home, to people like you and me who like to see live music, it's
yeah.
they're not going to be around.
I mean, is that what you're hearing, that, there won't be anything done before at least a new administration? Is it on the I mean, it's still on the plate, obviously. They're trying to get this funding through right now, but what are you hearing about what's gonna go on during this transition period?
Well, I heard that. I mean, I think that nobody wanted a piecemeal solution, but I think now that they're starting to talk about, well, what happens if it was a piecemeal solution. So maybe there's a little bit of funds now, there's a little bit later, there's a little bit of whatever. That's what I'm hearing now. But the situation changes every day, and unfortunately, after the last years under the current administration, I'm taking a wait and see mentality to it.
Yeah. And it's so sad that this is occurring. I mean, it's been so many months to just sit here and think about how it's negatively affecting these venues.
Well, and
How are
I mean, I try to keep it in perspective because I think of, all the people that have, I mean, the incredible hardship that the world's gone through during this pandemic, and um, my little the corner of the world is very very important to me. I mean, this is my life's work, but I try to keep it in perspective as far as the loss of life and the hardship that people have had to go through. It's it's just a
Yeah,
little piece,
yeah, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I'm deeply disturbed by the death and affected by all the hardship that's going on,
Yeah, for sure.
as are you.
Yeah.
Um, Music is ancillary to those more pressing life problems that are directly affecting other people.
Right.
On the other hand, I'm a believer in music. I love live music, and it enhances people's lives, and, I wanna see it come back around as soon as possible. And you've been instrumental in independent venues in Chicago, and I hope the best for your particular venues. How are your venues doing right now, and what's the current status?
Well, all of our venues are closed, and the people that the great people that work for 16 on Center. I mean, there's nothing more than they're doing. I just got off a music marketing phone call about an hour ago, and we want to do things, and all throughout this pandemic, we've been trying to come up with fun ways to do streaming or to um, to keep active in doing the things that we love. But we're all always faced with that last remaining question, which is, what for? What's the safety of it all? Does it make sense to do these things now? But our venues remain closed right now. We are utilizing the great amount of space that we have to try to help out non-for-profits that are out there and other people that are trying to do good and are in need of space. So that's what we're doing currently. But we're not doing what we'd love to do, which is to put on live music.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to that a little bit. I mean, the
Sure.
origins of Empty Bottle in Ukrainian Village neighborhood where we're both located in Chicago. You're obviously in Chicago. I'm in Chicago as well.
Yeah.
What propelled you originally to open a music venue? I mean, clearly, I would assume love of music, love of live music, obviously, but taking back a little bit to that, to your thinking and the origin of the Empty Bottle, which is one of the premier dive bar venues in the United States.
Well, I was pretty much blessed with the idea that I found what I wanted to do when I was in college. I found this small little dive bar called the Blue Note, which is it's this great little 400, 300 capacity bar that sits in the middle of St. Louis and Kansas City and Columbia, Missouri. And, the first time I went to see a show there, I just fell in love with it. And all I wanted to do was be there. The guy wouldn't hire me right away. So I came after school every day, and I would clean up and I would do whatever odd jobs I could until one day he
Wow.
said, "Hey, why don't you take the door?" And I was there all the time. I mean, I fell in love with it. I was smitten with it. I was, the idea of seeing music that was happening in front of your eyes. And I know that that sounds weird because that's what live music is, but there was there was something about being in that front row and being part of a show and being part of that
Totally.
that that energy,
Yeah.
it was something that the minute the first time I saw it, I was bitten. There was nothing
Yeah.
else that I could figure out that I wanted to do with my life. So I came back to Chicago, um, and the first person I went to see was these two women, Julia and Sue Miller, who owned a place called Lounge Axe, and
Mhm.
I had been in love with that place, and um, I started hanging out there, doing whatever I could. I worked at Hyatt for a while, but ultimately I got tired of of the corporate world. Like I said, I worked at Hyatt for a while, and um, I decided it was time to do something else. And I was driving around Chicago late at night, lamenting on the fact that I had to wear a suit during the day when all I wanted to do was be in a bar drinking a Pabst or something like that. And I saw this for rent sign on Western Avenue at like 3 in the morning, and called the next day, and that was the location for the first Empty Bottle.
Yeah, which was a couple blocks down from where it is on Western
Two
right now.
blocks, 2 blocks south. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And
And
remind me again, how old were you at the time?
I was 23,
So
and I
you were
worked.
like you were aching to become a real estate mogul at the ripe old age of 23.
Yeah, with the $790 I had in my bank account that I decided to turn into the Empty Bottle. Yeah, I was really
Wow.
thinking about being a mogul. All I wanted to do was put on live music, and
Yeah.
we operated that place, and it was there was a small community that lived in that area, and every single person who lived in that community helped build this place that was to become the Empty Bottle. And I remember the first day, after opening and after setting this whole place up and getting things going, and learning along the way about how to do this. I had our first show there, which was this band called the Cocktails, and
Hmm.
these Polish gents who lived in the neighborhood, they built the stage over a pool table, and I was all excited and I was ready to go, and I was behind the bar and the place was packed, and it was like my life dream had come about. And my landlord walked in, and I looked at him with this, if you can imagine, just this face of just utter like enjoyment that I had achieved this goal in my life. And he just looked at me, shook his head at me, and told me that there was going to be never going to be any more live music. And I started looking for the new place, which was 2 blocks down.
So you rented the first place?
I rented the first place. The first we always thought that that we would keep both the places open, and that would be the Empty Bottle, and this new place where the Empty Bottle currently resides would be the Empty Bottle Annex.
Right.
Um, but after getting booted out of that first place, we turned our focus to the Empty Bottle as we all know and love it to be.
Yeah. So obviously you were renting this place, and so the landlord comes in, and clearly, I know you probably read the noise ordinance paragraph in your lease really well.
At least, yeah. Well, it wasn't that. It was more or less like, like I was saying, like here I am at my ripe young age where I kind of achieved this milestone that I was so looking forward to. I mean, this is all I wanted to do, was to be able to put on live music, and and I thought I'd be sharing this with the world, and everybody would feel the same way I did. But here comes my landlord in a white frock, because he worked at a butcher shop, came in and just
Just
shook
keeps
his
getting
head.
better.
Yeah, shook his head, and that was the end of shows at the old Empty Bottle. And we had already been working on the new Empty Bottle, and slowly but surely trying to get it to a point where we could have shows there. But at that point, we decided that we were just going to focus our attention on
Yeah,
the
no,
new
I love the
place.
DIY spirit at the first place, though. That's awesome.
Oh my God, there's this band called Space Streakings. They're from Japan. They were on this band called Skin Graft, which was a huge Chicago band, Chicago
Right.
label for a while. And they were putting this beam in the empty bottle. There used to be a beam that sat in the middle of the stage, and we had to remove it. And the this gent was working at like 12 o'clock at night because we didn't have permits back then. But we needed to move this beam that probably weighed about I don't know, a couple thousand pounds. And I just went over to the bar and I said, "Hey, can anybody come help me?" And there was this Japanese man called Space Streakings that was sitting at the bar, and they were tiny. They were tiny people.
Right.
They were tiny. But these guys were just like, I emptied out the old bar. Everybody marched down to the new empty bottle and they moved this beam. And to this day, Space Streakings, if you're still out there, you guys are my
You hear that,
heroes.
guys? So how
Yeah.
did you tell me about a little bit of how you found the current location?
Well, I mean, I was in, the bottle was running for a while, and you know, I had become firmly entrenched in Ukrainian Village. I mean, I was living there, I was part of it. You know, all we wanted to do was, my thought from the very beginning was, if you build places that you like, hopefully other people would like that too. And that's really kind of the mantra that we had used toward the first empty bottle. So we had really become part of that neighborhood.
Hmm.
And at some point in time there was this bar that where the empty bottle was now, which was called the Friendly Inn. And it was also affectionately known as the Bucket of Blood,
Yeah.
because there was a whole bunch of activities that would happen there that would uh, produce that red substance to come out of people's bodies.
I
um, but the old owners who had been there forever and ever and ever decided to sell, and I was like, holy shit, this let's do this.
Yeah,
This is a great this will be great.
totally.
And little did I know that 30 years down the road, I would still have this place that was, my favorite place on earth.
That's awesome. So, what were those early days like? Were you? I mean, you had built up relationships with bands to that point. Were you booking at that point, or what did that kind of look like?
Yeah, I was booking bands, and it was kind of the wild west then. I mean, here this was kind of like there was a boom of Chicago bands and Chicago interest in music that was starting to come up.
Hmm.
And um, there was this great neighborhood community that was forming in Ukrainian Village and Bucktown and Wicker Park. And the whole scene was really electric.
Yeah.
And here was the empty bottle, and Liz Phair was walking down the street, and here comes Nirvana, and Babes in Toyland, who were touring together. I mean, there were just people around.
Wow.
It was a great scene.
Yeah.
And and to see these people sitting at the bar and just be like, hey, we're gonna, what are you doing next Tuesday?
Yeah.
It was really organic. So it wasn't it wasn't anything thought out about, like, oh, I'm going to call these agents and I'm going to do this. It was just kind of like, hey guys, what are you doing? Let's do this. You want to play? Or my friends are coming to town next week.
Yeah.
You know, you want to play? And at the bottle, I mean, one of my favorite stories is, um, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs were playing there for their soon to be label Touch and
Hmm.
Go. And there were like 10 people there. The label wanted to see the band play. And after the show was over, their tour manager came up to me and he said, hey man, I want to give you a tape of my band that I'm in. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And it was a band called TV on the Radio.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like all these things are organically happening, and it's just people who are part of the scene and about part of this great community that was building in Chicago, and the energy was just insane.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love how you talked about your origins of just loving shows and loving to be in that energy and wanting that to happen again and again, and that's kind of propelled you to create that type of venue but the origins are super are just super pure and beautiful in that sense, that you were there, and it was happening, and you were a part of it, and you were giving oxygen to music. And mm, how did it fit in? How did it fit in the city and in the neighborhood at that point? Like, what was your initial impression of the relationship of uh and the Empty Bottle with Chicago and with Ukrainian Village at that time?
Well, Chicago and the art scene, both music and all different types of arts, was still dealing with the fact of rent and where people could live, and that kept moving out west,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And that's kind of the the configuration of like a whole bunch of people all meeting in this one area, right? So Chicago's music scene was, you know, it's always dealt with like these different time stamps, from you know house music to all to blues to jazz to rock to techno to indie rock. So these different places in time in Chicago, this just happened to be one of them in the 1990s, where you had this Touch and Go Records, which was the Chicago record label, and Southern Records, and there were all these wonderful DIY kind of labels that were starting up in Chicago,
Right.
and there was a great scene that was kind of emerging. And I think Chicago in itself, it's just such a great place for music, and people have this ability, this Midwest mentality of being very accepting of new types of stuff that's being open there, and really being able to open their arms and their ears, and just kind of open up their hearts to this type of music. And I think that that's something that we're seeing. Like, people weren't afraid of new stuff. There was a great jazz scene. We were doing this uh, the Empty Bottle Jazz and Improvised Music for a really long time, probably like 15 years, with John Corbett and Ken Vandermark,
Right.
who, these guys were bringing in people all around the world and the country to play this little hole in the wall. But the great thing that was happening is you had these jazz and improvised folks that were coming out who were playing with local Chicagoans.
Mhm.
And it was kind of coming up with that avant-garde, like Tortoise and Sea and Cake and Gaster, all those bands that were coming out of it. It was giving them another avenue to play.
Right.
So I kind of bring that up because that to me is Chicago, where you have like that little corner destination where people can get together with a whole different um, bunch of different ideas and put it together as something new, something different, something the same, but something great.
Yeah, I mean, are you still seeing those components today?
I do. It feels a little different now.
Mhm.
It's
How?
you. Because I think like I think people are trying to figure out the new way that we do things through, um, you know, radio and record sales and the internet and the way that people are getting their music. I think that that's making it different.
Yeah.
And I haven't quite, like I don't have a thesis pinned yet,
Mhm.
but I know that
We can work
artists,
on one.
yeah, but I know artists are really trying hard right now to find their way in this technology world that we live in, especially when you have something that's so organic as music, and how that ties
Yeah.
into the digital world of how we ingest certain things now.
Right. So it's a little bit of a kind of moving puzzle at this point, a little bit more than the way you saw it back in the early to mid 90s, when the bottle was coming up and becoming more of a place where it was like this was the place that you played, and you played your ass off, and you garnered fans that way. I mean, that component hasn't changed. I mean,
No,
still people are bringing it when they're on stage, and that's always important for fans, and fans want to connect with bands and vice versa. Um, that piece of the organic pie of live music is still similar, I would venture to say.
It is, maybe one of the things that has changed a little bit is um, that need to play to spread the word, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like
It
if
was less of
you,
a conscious, it was less of a conscious decision than now. You're kind of, there's always this sort of strategic, what are we doing? How do we get out? This is what the tour is going to look like. We got to play Chicago, and then we'll play Milwaukee next. And then we'll, different methods of touring. But then it was sort of like, oh, we're hitting the stage, and we're just going to kill it. And we're just going to move on to the next city.
well, also there's the other component that I can put my music up on Bandcamp or something, and all of a sudden it's in front of, however thousands of people, right?
Right.
Where the old way was this: people will see me if I play live. So I'm going to tour across the country tirelessly for the rest of my life till people get to hear my music.
Right. But the main component here is the show and the importance of the show and the
Exactly.
connection. And that still hasn't changed, but the kind of the dynamic of why that's important has sort of changed. Would that be fair characterization?
Yeah, or if everybody realizes that at the bottom, at the core value, it's live music.
Yeah. 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 You want to say the bottom line, then we're confusing our venues.
Right.
But
Right. Right.
which was like I went to I lived in New York for a while and did grad school at NYU, and I was right around the corner from the bottom line. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But
But you know what I
we
mean?
digress.
Like
Yeah.
there will never, ever, 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 ever be a replacement for being in the front row of a show.
No. Right.
You can't. You can't
I
do it.
totally agree with that. Nope, you cannot replicate
Yeah.
that. I mean, streams are great and everything, and hey, I get a shoot to the bathroom,
Right.
and I'm back in a second, and
Right.
I'm back on my couch. That part is great, but no, you cannot replicate the sound quality, the energy, the sweat, everything.
And think of the bands, and I bet, like, if you and I were had a couple cold ones and we're sitting around, we could come up with a whole list. Bands whose recorded music suck, but are the best live performances you've ever seen.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. We couldn't fit that in I mean, it's
Right.
just that's the best. I mean,
Right.
that's the best.
If left to their recorded music, would never be anything.
Yeah.
But because
It's
of
a
their
big
live experience.
It's a big fucking list, but then there are people that love those bands because they love the studio albums, and so, I mean, it is about the
Yeah.
songs. I would argue that the songs still have to be good to a certain degree,
Oh,
but
without a doubt.
you don't get that feeling, you don't get the energy, you don't get that extra punch, obviously, at a live show. I
Yeah.
mean,
Without a doubt. The music's got to be good, or in the restaurant, the food's got to be good before you can go anywhere.
right, right. Well, so you're in hospitality, and how did the intersection of hospitality and music start happening for you? And was that a factor in branching out to other venues in Chicago for you?
So it really all boils down to, if you do something you like with the hopes that other people like it too. It was just me and the people that were around me, and part of it growing up. You know,
Yeah.
we were in the Empty Bottle, and the only place we could eat lunch or dinner was a Polish joint called Andre's Grill across the street. And
Hmm.
while Polish food is awesome, if you eat it every single day, your arteries start to become cemented.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Right.
probably
Well,
taken a decade off my life. It's delightful,
yeah.
but we had no place to eat, so we built Bite Cafe.
Right.
And the idea was, it is, a
Which is like not right next door to the venue.
it's part of the Empty Bottle, right?
It's part of it. Yeah. Okay.
And the idea was is that, bands who are touring here and grace us with the ability to be able to play on our stages should think of the Empty Bottle and all of our venues as like their home away from home. And that means
Nice.
having good food. That means being treated like family.
Yep.
And that's the only way that we can do it, right?
Right.
So from there, we decided that we really liked bourbon. So we opened up
Hmm.
a place called Longman and Eagle,
Yeah,
right? Um, all the ideas come from growth and trying new things and expanding your horizons as to what you feel like doing next. But there's an honesty that we try to put into everything we do that comes from, hey, we can only build something that we like. It's the only thing we know how to do. And you hope that other people will like it too. But if we've never been good at building Disneyland, if we had built Thalia and hired an interior decorator to decorate that place, it would never be Thalia Hall. It would never
no, yeah,
show the history of the building, the patina of the layers of what's happened there since the 1890s.
yeah.
And that,
And for those of you who aren't from Chicago, I mean, that's just like one of the most beautiful buildings in Chicago, let alone in music and indoors is just it looks like an old longshoreman's hall sort of, but like elegant and regal, and that in just high ceiling and open balcony, and it's just it's really beautiful, and it's one of my favorite venues in the city for sure.
yeah, and it's just to hopefully the people out there will have a chance to make it there. But when you walk through those doors and you see the expanse of the ceiling and you see the the proscenium and you see the boxes in there, it's just an architectural beauty and
It
it's
is.
just
It
an
is.
absolute delight. That sounds great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've gone to Thalia Hall countless times. I mean, I live like 5 minutes from there, but I've been in that venue when we're walking in and there's no one in there, one of the first people there, and people have not been in that venue before. And the hands down, it's the same reaction every
Yeah.
single time. Wow, I've heard about this place, they say, but I never really recognized how absolutely beautiful it is. And
And then the other thing you were talking about is the intersection, and the intersection is between music, food, and booze. And that's
yeah,
because those are three things that we really, really, really like.
yeah,
So why shouldn't we be able to do all three of those things? And why shouldn't there be a connection between them all when we're experiencing them?
absolutely. Well, you've certainly like accomplished that. I mean, Thalia and Empty Bottle, like one of the greatest places to hang around after the show. I mean, they're phenomenal. And tell me a little about the Promontory,
So the promontory was, there was this man.
which is down on the south side of
It's it's
Chicago
in
and Hyde
Hyde
Park.
Park.
For those who don't know,
It's in Hyde Park, and I love the story when they came to us and they said we are a top three or top four university in the country. But for
hmm,
some reason, when people leave class, there's nothing for them to do, so they're not coming here.
right,
So we'd like you to come down here and um, do something that would give people a place to hang out here,
yeah,
and that means in Hyde Park. So I mean, we
right,
we there was this gentleman who still works for me today, Jake Austin, and Jake Austin is probably one of the smartest humans when it comes to music. And Jake is a
wow,
writer. He's written books. He does this great magazine called Rocktober magazine. Um, and I knew Jake from the beginning of the bottle because Jake came up with this puppet called Ratso, and Ratso has been interviewing rock musicians for 30 years.
Ratso the puppet.
Ratso the puppet.
Is that kind of where Triumph the insult dog came from?
Jake is a brilliant weirdo and is
Yeah,
also lives in Hyde Park and has for a long, long, long time. And together with him, we were able to have this venue that paid homage to all the great music that has in the history of music that's been from Hyde Park,
right.
and to really create some place that we hope that the neighbors there call their own.
That's great. That's great. And you've done the same thing up in Evanston or similar in another community that was probably underserved by music for sure.
Yeah, so that's my partner Craig. That's his place, and
Right.
that was before he and I handshook over our merging together as homies. Um,
Yeah.
but it's the reason that we are so good together, and the reason why I love him is because it's really that same kind of MO. He lives there. It's his community.
Yeah.
And he wanted to build someplace that he wanted to go to. And in fact, like the Empty Bottle to me, Craig has got his own bar stool there that you can find him at almost at the end of every night,
Yeah, that's important.
right? It's our happy place.
Yeah, for sure. And for those that don't know, that's a small room in the back of a Union Pizza
Mhm.
in Evanston, and it's just a I've seen a ton of great shows there. I mean, the accessibility to the band, you're basically on the same level as that. They walk through the crowd to get to the
Yeah,
to get to the
right,
stage. I mean, if you don't like if you don't like mingling with your fans as an artist, don't play space in Evanston.
right. There's a little bit of
No,
FOMO.
let me phrase that differently. You're gonna become a fans mingling artist after you play space. Let's put it that way.
Right, but there's a humbleness to it, right?
Absolutely,
Right,
absolutely.
like the band when you walk on stage at the Empty Bottle, you have to walk through the crowd to get to the stage, but
Yeah.
it's almost like an
Well, kind of
open
off to the side, sort of.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
but
almost like
still, yeah,
there's somewhat of an open kitchen kind of mentality to it, where like,
yeah.
hey, the band's right there. If you don't like
Right,
it, you can
right.
just tell them.
And in that sense, Thalia is kind of the more formal, right? It's got you know, it's a huge, much bigger stage.
Hmm.
It's more of like a traditional sort of venue that I would picture, like larger stage, big. It's a ballroom essentially. In Flavor Two, it's like 1,000 capacity, right?
Yeah,
And nice backstage area. It's just sort of in the, but even at Thalia, the tour buses are parked outside and the band's got to walk through the tack room, which is the bar just to the side there to get to the stage door and get out to the tour bus. I mean, it's a place where performers can easily interact with fans
yeah.
and fans can see the performers. If your favorite performer is playing at Thalia Hall, I would suggest you go there because the chances are that you run into that person are pretty high.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, after the show, they're hanging out at the bar as well.
Yeah, or before, yeah,
Yeah,
hell yeah. Getting the great curry soaked sausage at Dusek's.
yeah. There you go.
It's my favorite pre-show.
There you go.
Yeah. Um, and Thalia is special. I'm from Chicago. I'm familiar with Pilsen, and that's a wonderful neighborhood for food and just to go hang out. And it's certainly become a lot different than it has been over the years. Some people say gentrification. I mean, that's kind of a loaded word. Um, Maybe you've come under criticism for that. I defend the shit out of you because I'm like
Appreciate that.
bringing music to the fucking neighborhood, man. And like Thalia Hall's been there since 1890s or whatever, and, you know, all you're doing is like bringing music and creating some great restaurants and you're bringing people into the neighborhood. What's the stat with Chicago? Like for every dollar spent at a venue, $12 are being spent in the neighborhood or in the city or something crazy like that. So looking at that on a micro level in Pilsen, what have you seen over the years?
Well, I mean, there's no easy answer to gentrification. And, if you look at the building that Thalia had bankrupted and was sitting in disrepair when we found it. They were using the hall as a place to store shoes. Um,
Hmm. Wow.
and you kind of look at the disrepair and I'm so thankful that we were able to and had the ways and the means to be able to go in there and fix it up and to make sure that it stands the test of time for, centuries to come. But, it's a difficult pill to swallow for people that have lived in that community for ever and ever and ever,
Yeah.
because with taking a building and repairing it and remodeling it, then people want to come into the neighborhoods and rents get increased and people who can't afford that rent end up getting, turned away from the neighborhood. So there's really no easy answer. And, we try to be as sensitive as we can to it, because it's a real thing. It's a real thing
Yeah.
to see people who can't afford houses anymore all of a sudden looking and, being like, well, where am I going to live?
How have you combated that? I mean, in that neighborhood.
Well, we try to keep the workforce in Pilsen, right? And we try to hire from Pilsen. And we also try to be good neighbors and try to be uh, part of the neighborhood and part of the community instead of just people who came into the community.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's difficult. It's difficult from so many different levels, but all we can do is try to be good people, right?
Yeah,
Good business
absolutely.
folks and good people, and do that neighborhood and that building proud.
Yeah. Now, from a booking standpoint, I'm always curious, like these are different venues with different characteristics for different bands potentially. Um, for booking, and I know you don't do the booking personally. I mean, I'm sure you probably have an influence on that, I would venture.
Yeah.
But is it just from a capacity standpoint? Is it from an availability standpoint that you're bringing bands in to a particular venue? I mean, obviously Thalia's got certain, it's 1,000 person capacity there, right?
Mhm.
But what are some of the driving factors as to what bands that you want to bring in to each particular venue and why?
Well, I think the booking goes along with much of our mantra for everything else. We try the only it's music is so subjective that it's very difficult for anybody to say this is what you should like. So the booking that we do at Thalia is the stuff that we believe in. We can't book everything, and there's really no way to ever um, decide what we think everybody should listen to, but all we can do is make sure that it's good music, make sure it's stuff that we like, and hopefully other people that come in will understand the relativity of what we're putting on there.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's kind of a confluence of the people that play space, the people that play the bottle, the people that play Promontory, and as they get bigger and they start to outgrow those smaller clubs, we have a venue that's of a bigger capacity that people can still continue to work with us, and we can
right.
continue to work with these people that we call family, but give them a different scenario, a different situation. It's kind of the same thing where Empty Bottle Presents and Out of Space, which are two entities of our businesses that promote shows outside of the four walls of those venues, we're able
Hmm.
to, Empty Bottle Presents specifically tries to find alternative surroundings for bands that are looking to play. Not everybody wants
Huh.
to play traditional settings. Like they'll do shows um, you know, in
Oh, it was like a Garfield Park show
Garfield
last
Park.
year
They
or a
do
couple of years
for
ago,
some reason
which
Brent.
is for those who don't know, is a conservatory, like what do they call that? The botanical
Yeah,
garden, like an indoor botanical garden. What the
right.
fuck is that called?
A
I can't
conservatory.
remember.
You're good. Garfield
Yeah.
Park
Okay. All right.
Conservatory.
Yeah. I was good the first time. Why did I
Right.
even doubt myself?
Right. But the other thing is Brent, I don't know why, really loves doing shows at cemeteries. But for folks that
But who does? Who likes doing show?
Brent is one of the talent buyers, loves doing shows. We did the shows at the um yeah, he loves doing shows at cemeteries. But to come up with these different plays, to
Yeah, that's great.
every artist has other things that they'd like to do with their music, and we try to be open and creative in ways that we are able to do those things too. So there's different approaches, but Thalia is that next traditional play that we've once again tried to make home.
Yeah. What about on the festival front? I know I saw Kurt Vile as part of what was that? That was part of the 312.
Yeah.
How was Empty Bottle Present? Obviously you guys were involved in that, or was just Kurt just playing an after
No,
show
we
at Empty
do
Bottle?
we do all the booking for that. We do Westfest, we
Oh, okay.
do Division, we do our own little festival outside of the Empty Bottle called Music Pros and Dancing.
That, yeah, 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 yeah.
Out of Space does their festivals, but it's just a matter of coming up with different ways to present awesome music.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You
Yeah.
guys do an amazing job with that. Um, Future of music. Like what are you seeing in terms of I mean, we talked about the finance bills that are hopefully coming shortly. And to keep venues afloat until just giving them some assistance, and hopefully they won't go out of business and before that comes through. But once it does, assuming venues, are bringing back bands, what are you hearing in terms of timing and types of shows that will start to become a thing, hopefully sooner than later, in terms of in-person shows?
Yeah, I think we got some time. I think
Yeah, yeah.
it'll be next year. I
Hmm.
hope. I hope.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whenever anybody asks me about timelines, I always try to tell them, like, my medical degree is still not here in the mail yet. Um, you know, I think outside is probably going to be a good option for people for a little bit.
Oh yeah, even around here, like April-ish,
Yeah.
Early May-ish, when things start, yeah, when drive-in shows would, so maybe like drive-in shows would start coming back, something like that,
Well, but I
when
think
it's warm enough.
still like those ideas of being able to have music in really wide open spaces. I think that's a really good idea and a really good
Yeah,
option. But I think that ultimately, there's going to have to be a lot of kind of like holding on, and for these venues that are inside focused venues are really going to have to get some assistance to be able to make it through this next period, because I think it's going to be a while.
yeah. I mean, and most venues, like, are you seeing it's clearly a venue by venue kind of financing balance sheet story. Would that be a correct assessment as to, like, because I always wonder, and I'm thinking, like, which venues are able to hang on, which venues are not able to hang on. It's kind of a personal,
Oh
it's
yeah,
not like a personal, it's like it's a balance sheet issue from venue to venue, right?
of
I mean, is
course,
that what you're
yeah.
seeing? You're seeing, like, what their status is, what their cash is on hand, what do they need to pay out? Is it a mortgage? Is it a rent situation? Right. So,
And it's also desire. I mean, live music is kind of a call of the wild. It's not the most. You know, it is sometimes it is not the most financially rewarding of the businesses. So
hmm,
I think for some people it's that desire thing where it's like, look, how long am I going to hold on? And with
yeah,
the hopes that this does come back, with the unknown about what it's going to look back like when it comes back. I mean, the idea of those of us who have spent time like yourself in a venue, it's hard to fathom what it's going to look like after COVID, you know? And I mean, for such a basic statement as that, just the way that we as humans interact with each other's now is so different from what it was like in February of last year. So it'll be interesting, how long, to take a look at things like how long it took to kind of breed out the idea of that everybody had to shake everybody's hands,
yeah.
and what that looks like on the reverse side of it.
Right, yeah, we'll be going backwards starting with where we are now, right? I
Right.
mean, it's kinda like playing the movie backwards, right?
Right.
We're not gonna be nothing's gonna be like we're all gonna be far away, and it's just kinda hopefully gonna get closer as we go on. I don't really
Right.
see it getting back to full normal until 2022, but, what the fuck do I know? But I think, and maybe, would you agree that it's gonna be a gradual return to where we were?
So it's interesting. Like I was talking to some people the other day, and I kind of believe that. Yeah, it'll be a gradual return. Like I stand 15 feet away from you, then next week I stand 13 feet away from you. And then
Yeah,
somebody else brought up the thing. We as humans have such short memories.
yeah, well, that's a benefit and a curse.
Right. Like if we didn't, I'd never go to the dentist, right? Be like, I got
Right.
that cat. I know what you did to me
Yeah,
last time.
fuck
I'm not
that.
going back there.
Right, right. You gonna take that metal thing and poke
Yeah.
my gums again?
No way,
Fuck you.
dude. Not gonna happen to me.
Right.
But maybe that is that you look at it like 3 months and you go, what COVID?
Yeah, well, let's hope that's the
Yeah.
case. Yeah, masks at shows is, I would assume, will a mask be required at your venues?
I don't know. Try this one. How about plexiglass between the bands and the fans?
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. I
Seriously?
mean, think about
Thanks for ruining my fucking day, dude.
think about that stuff. I mean, I just have no idea. And ever since the beginning of it, I've been saying like, look, we need the medical professionals to stand up and tell us what we need to do, because as owners, as lovers of live music, we'll do whatever the fuck you tell us to do. right?
Right.
We just want to be
Yeah.
able to put something, we want to be able to see live music. We will want to do it in a safe manner that everybody can walk out of there without getting sick or getting killed and be able to do it again. So whatever we need to do.
Is your thinking different because you're in the music business that has a conscience?
Well, we closed everything. I mean, we have 2 places that are open and they do carry out and delivery.
Only.
Yeah.
And wasn't there a COVID issue at Longman and Eagle?
There's COVID issues.
Yeah, everywhere, but there, yeah, I
And
just
by the
happened to, I
way,
guess maybe just the name kind of, I just remembered the name.
and one of the things that I was really proud that was done this way was, look, it happened. We closed and we thought that
Yeah.
people should know about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I heard of it. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
So, and, you know, if it, I can't imagine, I mean, if you look at the infection rates and you look at the people that have got the disease in one form or another, it's
Yeah.
hard to believe that there isn't a really good percentage of restaurants out there that haven't had a COVID touch in one way or another, that they should probably have closed or should have done stuff, and hopefully they've done the correct procedures to make it so that their customers are safe and their staff and their family.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think your assessment of like that it's just we're gonna move back gradually and everyone will get closer and closer and closer. And that'll be as vaccines are coming out, hopefully
Yeah.
in mass distribution and produced. And that's going to kind of be a progression throughout the year. But yeah, coming back with something that socially distant shows, just like we saw End, because they were mostly a lot were in the Midwest and on the East Coast, and it's just getting too cold to do that.
Yeah.
Probably come back when the weather's a little, like, at least we're into the
Yeah.
50s,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right, which is
What's
not.
your rock level? Is it 30s, 40s? That's really why we did. That's why we did music frozen dancing. We wanted to see if people would come out in February for like -degree weather, and they did. And now,
Oh
ever
yeah,
since that first one, now it's really warm on that date for some reason. Every time we do that festival,
that's great though. Depends how many fire pits you have
I know,
going.
but it totally ruins the whole perspective of it. Should be freezing.
I know. I don't know what's better, like, because I went to that conservative to the Garfield Park thing.
Yeah.
So you're wearing a heavy coat going in there, and then you're carrying the fucking heavy coat around all night long. If you didn't want to go to the coat check or
I
something,
know.
because like then you step into a place that's 80
I
degrees and
know.
like 90% humidity. It's hilarious.
Right. So
But
your mom would have told you would have caught a cold.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, well, that's great, Bruce. It was so great to get all this awesome information from you, and it's such a pleasure to finally meet you and talk with you. And I'm a big admirer of what you've done for Chicago and the scene and just music in general. And like I said, Thalia Hall's I mean, I know the bottle's amazing. Thalia's one of my favorites. I mean, and you guys, you just do such a great job, and you're a really delightful human, and it's really great to talk with you. And you're a legend in Chicago.
I,
I'll tell.
I appreciate. Look, it's people like you that like what we do. That's
Yeah,
really
well,
important.
yeah, we're just vibing on the same
Yeah.
level in terms of music. I
Yeah.
mean, you had me from Hello. So we're talking about being in the front row of shows when you were younger. I mean, that's me. That's me even now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, fortunately, I've been back and seeing shows side stage at Thalia when I've known some people that were in the bands that got me back, and that's been great. And just being all over the place and being able to see shows from different perspectives, and that's kind of like that's what we love on
Yeah.
Roadcase.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. It was great talking to you. Hopefully we can connect again
Anytime.
sometime.
I'll be in my car.
Right on. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, man. Take care. Okay, there you have it. Bruce Finkelman, owner of the Empty Bottle, owner of Thalia Hall, both in Chicago. So cool to hear of the DIY beginnings of Empty Bottle in the Ukrainian Village neighborhood in Chicago. Bruce called it the Wild Wild West in that neighborhood in the early 90s. Just to hear the number of bands that came rolling into that venue at the time to hear Bruce's love of music, how he just loved the live show, and that's what kind of brought him to develop that venue, which has become one of the premier dive bar venues in the country, frankly. At the heart of it all, it's really the live show. And as Bruce explains, regardless of how fans are getting their music through Bandcamp or through other streaming services, the core value is really the show. And we all hope to be back at those shows soon enough. I'd like to thank Bruce again for being here. I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in to Roadcase. I'd like to thank Walzer for this amazing theme music. I'd like to encourage all of you to get involved with Roadcase by emailing me your questions, comments, suggestions for guests, info@roadcasepod. You can also check us out on the socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And if you can and are able to support this podcast on Patreon, we have a Patreon site at patreon.com/roadcasepod. Again, I'd like to thank Bruce Finkelman for being here. I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in. We'll see you on down the road.